And again, I wanted to welcome everyone to the Foreign Trade Association's meeting with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, as well as the United States Coast Guard. Today we have two excellent speakers. Again, Carlos Martel, Director of Field Operations from the Southern California region, located at the World Trade Center in Long Beach, California. And in addition, Captain Monica L. Rochester, United States Coast Guard, also responsible for the Southern California region. And the two, both Captain Rochester and DFO Martel, will be giving us an overview on the current status of COVID-19 updates and a variety of other issues that are of importance to the trade. I hope everyone is able to hear and see all of the participants here today. And I want to welcome you to this presentation. We are using a new and different platform, so I wanted to let you know that we're doing our very best to make this as easy for everyone as possible. But please bear with us a little bit during the course of this meeting, if you don't mind, just because we're working with a new technology and learning a little bit as we go along. And as usual, please disregard the dog, the kids, and anyone else that just happens to wander in the room, because Lord knows that'll happen too. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce DFO Martel and ask him to give us an update on what's going on in the port.
Cameron, can you hear me?
Yes, I certainly can.
Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I get started, I want to thank the Foreign Trade Association and specifically Mr. Roberts for setting this meeting up. I know that a lot was done in the background to move to this new platform at our request, given some internal policies. So again, I'd like to extend my thanks and also thank you for the opportunity to just give an update on what we're doing here in LA. The things I want to cover, I know what Cameron put out Cameron, did you put out this agenda to all the participants?
No, that was just an internal memo.
Okay, so I'm going to cover a couple of things today, to include a status update of our workforce, some of the operational adjustments that we've made, talk a little bit about entry summary post-release processes, where we are with exams. I know there's questions about GO, bonded facility, CFS, yard space, whatnot, and then some of the facilitation efforts that we're doing with regard to importing PPE, and then of course, there's rumors that there's some enforcement activity with regard to illicit shipments. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But I think what I want everyone to take away from this meeting, that as it relates to LA operations, CBP continues to maintain a steady state of operations at all of our ports of entry, as well as the centers of excellence and expertise. We've seen a decrease in cargo, which isn't unusual this time of year, following Chinese New Year. But I mean, we know that COVID-19 has affected cargo. My staff are telling me that they've seen an increase in bill of lading transmissions, so we anticipate that cargo is going to start to slowly increase. But the real takeaway here is that the pandemic in and of itself has not disrupted CBP's ability or LA's ability to process incoming cargo. Our timeframes for cargo processing remain unchanged, and that's in part due to a lot of the internal or the proactive approach that we've taken internally to reduce our officer exposure in the workplace, keep our officers safe, and keep the general public and the trade community safe. Our goal, or my goal here, is to make sure that we're maintaining a healthy workforce, so that our team is ready to come back or ready to engage in any increases in operational tempo as things start to increase. In terms of operational adjustments, we've made some that have direct relationships to your operations, some are indirect. I believe Captain Rochester will probably talk a little bit about the movement of vessels, but in terms of some of the operational changes, I can highlight some of the things that we're doing. With regard to vessel boardings, the entrance and clearance of arriving vessels, we're not meeting vessels anymore we are working with vessel agents to have those entrance and clearance formalities done in the office, kind of minimize, exposure to the crew, as far as we can to keep, in line with social distancing practices and keep our folks healthy. We do have the ability to telework, so I'm happy to say that all center employees are actively working on processing post-entry summary work. I'm sure there's going to be questions. I anticipate there's going to be questions with delays in certain areas, but as it relates to COVID-19, all of our staff are actively at work. They're working remotely, but issues, processes are all being addressed. Same with our officers. We are employing a number of different internal options to keep everyone engaged, to keep a healthy workforce, but we don't see any significant changes there. But telework is a significant change. We have maximized our ability there. I think one change for those of you that are involved in perishable commodities, and you probably have seen memos on these things, but normally we request veterinary health certificates. We ask for paper documents. We've now moved to allow those to be submitted through the document imaging system in ACE. So, in the case that we were to need actual documents, the affected agriculture specialist that's doing the review would reach out to the entity, or involved in the transaction. The other notice that I'm sure most of you have seen, if you import these products, is that the pre-clearance program in New Zealand was suspended at the end of March. So inspections of apples, pears from New Zealand are going to be expected here at the port of entry. So that you may see an uptick in exams, or we don't anticipate delays, but there'll be an uptick in exams. With regard to entry summary and post-release trade processes, I think the messaging out of headquarters and the messaging locally, and again, we have the staff available to process the work, but what we're asking that the trade community make full use of ACE and the document imaging system. Use it to the fullest extent possible. Again, we want to minimize exposure, minimize contact. So entry summaries, responses to CF-28 or quote unquote request for information, protests, post-importation claims, anything that you can submit through ACE, we're asking that you do that. Same thing with payments, whether it be payments of duties, taxes, and fees, like damages, prior disclosures, whatever the case may be, that you submit those electronically. Our preferred method is ACH, automated clearinghouse. But if you can't submit it electronically, then we ask that you request to be billed for it, and then you submit it by mail. What we want to minimize is entities coming to the port and that personal interaction at the port. I know some questions have come up. Cameron sent me a note with regard to, I guess, liquidated damages, but I guess the way I should address it would be discretion. With regard to response to any deadlines, whether it be a request for information, a notice of action, resubmitting a rejected entry, or liquidated damages. We can and will exercise discretion with regard to our timeframes, with regard to whatever extenuating circumstances have occurred. We ask that if you're in a situation, whether it be that you couldn't file something on time, or there were some extenuating circumstances that resulted in something not being done, that you reach out to the port, that you reach out to the center, that you work with those respective teams to articulate that, which will allow us the opportunity to exercise this discretion and maybe extend timeframes, or even as it relates to the FP&F world, maybe consider some additional mitigating factors in the supplemental petition process. I think the only item that we can't extend are the time frame for submitting protests. That continues to that's governed by statutory requirements, and we can't extend that. I know there were some CSMS messages, which most of you have already seen, with regard to the payment of duties. Initially we had the agency had deferred the payment of duties, then they retracted that. Where we are now, if you haven't heard, there was a CSMS message that went out saying that we are no longer deferring duty payments. So in those situations where we have brokers out there brokers that have an entry they have to file, or the importer hasn't produced or provided the appropriate duties, taxes, and fees, we're simply asking that they file a non-payment filing. That we exercise, brokers should exercise reasonable care, continue to file their entries, and then we'll deal with the payment on the back end. With regard to examinations, again, we have a full complement of staff in the field available at the port. Our examinations, both non-intrusive inspections, the NI exams on the terminals, as well as examinations at the centralized examination stations, they continue to happen. I know there's some concern with regard to the movement of cargo and how that's going to affect it. I realize and recognize that a lot of the exams on the terminals are governed by the terminal operators and the availability of equipment like chassis. So there is a potential that the terminal's ability to stage containers, if there's a large influx of shipments, could be affected based on their limited space and I guess the limited availability of chassis. Our commitment is that we're going to continue to work with the terminal operators. We're going to reduce NI backlogs, if there are any, by deploying additional field teams. We're going to offer multiple appointment times if needed, and accommodate the staging of containers at multiple locations. So we're not going to be set at one location. We can split it up. We will work around whatever constraints the terminals have. With regard to CES examinations, operations, we haven't seen any delays in any of our operations there. Set team, Met team, IBET examinations continue to run as scheduled. We are working closely with our partnering government, our other government agencies, or the PGAs. I forget what the new term is these days. They are available to conduct exams, so we have not seen any diminished capacity in our ability to coordinate with the PGAs with regard to any of their requirements. We have sufficient resources at the warehouses to address any increase in volume. We haven't, I know there was a question on general order freight. We haven't seen an increase, from our end on general order requests or any type of movements. I've got a couple of staff from the port online that can speak specifically to that if there's any questions. Same thing with yard storage requests, or even the processing of CFS applications. No delays, no issues, no backlog. In fact, the CFS is reporting that they've seen a slowdown in freight. So there is not a lack of bonded storage capacity. We should not see any issues there. But again, if you're seeing that, and I'll get to this at the end, but we're going to give out points of contact. Please reach out to us. Make us aware of any issues and challenges that you're having, and we will address it accordingly. One of the things that we are committed to do, and that we've been doing locally, but we're also doing it at a national level, is we are facilitating the importation of personal protective equipment. There's a number of initiatives in play right now. We've been closely working with FEMA, with the city of Los Angeles, the port authorities here in LA, as well as private companies and air carriers to expedite the importation of PPE equipment. This is important to us as an agency. We're supporting the national effort. We want to support local hospitals, first responders, companies that want to safeguard their employees, as well as getting PPE equipment out to the general public. So if there are any requests or if there's any need to get PPE in, you have a number of avenues. You can contact us directly. Elba Muñetón of my staff is always available. She can coordinate with the ports of entry to facilitate the entry of shipments. You can reach out to me directly. We'll certainly do that. And then in a few minutes, I will talk to what headquarters has done in terms of facilitating the same on the national front. I think what's important here is that we've been working closely with FTA. For those of you that are in the business or are assisting businesses in bringing in PPE. We know that if there are certain requirements by FDA with regard to KN95 masks and other items, we're working closely with them here locally to make sure that any exemptions for any of those restricted masks are applied or processed as expeditiously as possible, so that we're not slowing up any of those shipments coming into the country. So that's something that we're committed to do here locally. And then, of course, at the national level, CBP has established a COVID-19 resolution team. It came out as under CSMS message. I think it's 423-64745, which puts you into a portal that gives you all the contact information. There's a link called COVID-19 Relief Imports. There's an email, and I believe there's a phone number there that you can call. And that team at the headquarters level is really there to address facilitation requests by both government agencies and the private industry. They'll help facilitate the release of cargo wherever it may be in the country. They're working with all 20 field offices to make sure that we're not only expediting those shipments, but that the entities that are bringing the shipments in are getting timely guidance on the importation of whatever medical supplies or personal protective equipment they're bringing in. So they're there at the national level. Again, we're here at the local level to assist on those shipments. I do want to dispel, there's been some rumors that there's been some activity with regard to PPE seizures or equipment. What we have seen, you've probably seen it on the news, is there has been an uptick on illicit activity related to COVID-19. Specifically the importation of counterfeit safety equipment, counterfeit PPE, unapproved or with regard to FTA, unapproved testing kits and medicines, or these miracle medicines that are being marketed here in the U.S. to address the pandemic. We're working closely with FDA to process these kits, as well as with Homeland Security investigations to conduct the appropriate investigation and enforcement action on entities that are introducing those into the U.S. Again, our goal is to keep Americans safe, so we're doing our part in redirecting our efforts to target and interdict the smuggling of those types of items. I think the last thing I want to touch is just remind the trade community. I know that everyone's signed up for CSMS. Just continue to monitor that. There'll be information that'll continue to come out as we develop guidance on the national level. It'll be disseminated through that system. The other thing is, at the end of this call, we're going to put out a summary of all of our points of contacts, links, phone numbers, as well as the COVID-19 Relief Import Division or the Cargo Resolution Team at headquarters, their contact information. I ask if you guys have any issues, please reach out to us. Whether it be a local issue. I know there's been questions about, will there be a deferral of duty or issues that are more at the national level. If we get that information here locally, we will funnel it up to DC so they have visibility as to what the trade at the local level is asking. So please don't hesitate to reach out to my staff, to reach out to me. We would certainly engage with the trade and get questions or those requests answered. And the last thing, you probably have all seen this, I wanted to mention, the trade symposium was postponed. We have a new date. If you haven't seen it, it's now going to be held in August, specifically August 25th and 26th of this year. So I look forward to seeing all of you there. With that said, I'll turn it back over to Cameron.
Well, thank you, Carlos. I really appreciate giving us that overview and insight into what's going on throughout the port complex. I did want to mention, just follow up on a couple of things that you mentioned. In particular, I was on the website and I did notice the CMS notice, as well as a publication on the number of employees that are, we lose our screen there? There it goes back. I did notice that we have approximately 20 officers or 20 people reported with COVID, and these officers have been able to be isolated and not impacting the workforce situation. That's just there was approximately 200 customs officers nationwide that apparently have been reported with COVID-19. Did you want to give any comments onto that?
I would simply say on that is that, compared to the national average, I think our commissioner and our leadership have taken a very proactive approach internally on how to manage this crisis, and I think the net result is that what you'll see is that we have a minimal amount of people impacted. We are being very proactive in safeguarding the health of our workforce and keeping them healthy, keeping them available. And I think the numbers show for themselves that, given the size of our organization, we have not experienced much impact.
And a lot of the customs officers are able to do their work from home, right?
Well, as it relates to the post summary processing, yes, they 100% they're available. With regard to cargo inspections, I can tell you that here in this field office in LA, we have a very healthy workforce. We're available to meet whatever workload challenges we'll see in the immediate future.
For some people, we've been asking about staffing in particular offices, FP&F being one that is a general concern for processing of petitions and seizures and other notices. Is FP&F at full capacity at this time?
FP&F is at full capacity. We have people that are working remotely as well as people in the office. So there should not be any impact or any delay. I did see the public bulletin from one of the other field offices. We were set up a little differently, but we do have people that are available.
Thank you very much. Wanted to also ask you, with respect to interagency communications, FDA's been out doing quite a few webinars as well. In fact, they had one earlier this week on FDA processing. Can you give us a little more insight into what the FDA relationship is with CBP and how we're handling any expedited PPE matters, or is there a particular outreach number, or is that something that we can look to within the points of contact that you'll be providing at the end?
Well, I will tell you, we have an excellent relationship with FDA locally. In fact, Dan Solis, the acting director, we speak on a regular basis, not only with me, but with my team. So in terms of a concerted effort to coordinate and expedite shipments that maybe have an FDA hold, we are working closely with them on that end. And with regard to their contact information, well, let me say this: we're not only working to expedite, but also the illicit part, right? We're working on the enforcement piece with them as well. But I cannot say enough good things about FDA and our close working relationship. But with regard to their contact information, we can certainly put something on the summary there to put you into contact whoever you need to speak to. I'm sure they'll make themselves available.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to say, other than the current CBD COVID updates and announcements that are available on the national website and the new CSMS that came out, and again, I'll repeat that number for the listeners, CSMS number 4236 4745. That's really the starting place. Is that also, although that's a national program, would that be the best place of access for local port issues, or do you think that coming in through your local port offices would be more expeditious?
Yeah, I think it'd be more expeditious. I think both. If you contact them, they'll immediately contact us. I think locally, though, we have a relationship with the trade. My staff know most of you out there. You can always reach out. I mean, it's really up to you. You'll probably get the same. You'll get the same time. The response will be the same. But if you have shipments at other field offices, I mean, you definitely want to go through headquarters because we can only control what comes in within the LA area.
Understood. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll circle back here. Did want to Captain Rochester, Cameron Roberts. I wanted to see if we could get you on video.
I have, looks like for some reason, my video has been disabled for this meeting. I'm not quite sure why. Feel a little bit disadvantaged, Cameron, not being able to see you and see our participants this morning. I'm not sure if you can see me.
I cannot see you, but I did want to say that your voice is coming in loud and clear.
Excellent.
And, I've enabled your video at this end, and I don't know what else to do. And as Carlos and I have dealt, this is a new technology for everybody, so I apologize that I can't make that happen at this moment from my end. But
that's okay.
I'll continue to try my best.
I actually got to see Director Martel briefly, and then he disappeared. So, but thank you very much for inviting me to be part of your conversation today. able to entertain questions, and good morning to the greater Trade Association members. Just as a Coast Guard general to support the Center for Disease Control, prevent, detect, and mitigate the spread of coronavirus. Vessel carrying passengers and non-passengers that have been impacted by regions within the last 14 days, they're going to be held offshore until they meet that 14-day requirement to ensure that there are no symptoms or any other COVID-19 symptomatic issues associated with those crews, so that we can maximize the safety and security of those ships coming into the port. And part of that process is we continue to assess all the advanced notice of arrivals, which are the 96-hour requirements, as well as if there's a vessel bound U.S. port to U.S. port, that's a 12-hour requirement. So all of those are being held along those statutory requirements. So as we continue to assess our advanced notice of arrivals for inbound vessels, we'll determine if the vessel has visited a country impacted by the coronavirus. And that all stems within the last 5 port calls. Coast Guard's assessment of advanced notice of arrivals and screening of vessels is done in collaboration and association with Customs and Border Protection, Office of Field Operations. It's a very symbiotic relationship. We constantly are engaging with them on a daily basis, incredibly throughout the day. I also have had critical communications with Director Martel on a number of concerns to make sure that it's very transparent and that we continue to maintain the maritime transportation system and the flow of cargo. Our number one, just like Director Martel mentioned, our number one priority, of course, is the safety and the health of the American people. So that's just opening remarks for me. My statutory authority rests within the port safety and security requirements, not only for the Port of Los Angeles, but the Port of Long Beach and the Port of Hueneme as deep draft ports. So, and that's canvassing those statutory requirements. What I'd like to offer a little bit about operations, and they should be very transparent to the people that we have regulatory oversight. If that hasn't occurred, I would entertain those concerns directly here at our complex in San Pedro. But I also want to comment on how we've managed our operations along the same lines that Director Martel mentioned. And we've had to become a bit creative. We've had to figure out a way of doing business in a new manner. And so some of that comes with very intrusive questioning under hazardous condition regulatory requirements before our folks board ships. We are very protective since we have, just like CBP OFO has a limited number of personnel. We're very protective of our health and readiness.
Captain Rochester? Now you're back. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, Captain Rochester? I'm holding for Captain Rochester. Hopefully she'll be joining us back in a second. She still shows. Captain Rochester? Captain Rochester? I see your microphone is unmuted. Captain Rochester?
Hey, Cameron, this is
You back? I think I have you back now. Hello?
Hey, Cameron, I just spoke to Coast Guard. They're trying to reconnect. They got the call dropped.
Oh, okay. We'll wait for a few minutes here. Captain Rochester, are you back?
Cameron, this is Isaac with the Coast Guard. Captain's recalling in right now. If you can stand by just another minute.
Standing by. While we're waiting, I'm going to put you back on.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for Captain Rochester to come back, maybe this might be a good opportunity to do some Q&A while we're waiting. You speak to the question of whether or not FPNF is releasing goods. There have been some indications in the trade press that once a decision is made to release seized goods for social distancing and other health reasons, the cargo will not be released. Is there any thoughts on that, or have you heard any reports from the CES to that?
I haven't heard any reports on that, nor have I seen that in the trade. I mean, here in LA, we haven't had any issues. So unless you guys are telling me that there's been you're experiencing problems with the release of with FPNF releasing goods or remitting goods, that should not be an issue here in Los Angeles.
Okay. And also, with the expectation, I know that Gene Soroka and Mario Cordero seem to both think that there'll be a significant increase in cargo operations once China comes back online in the normal course, and as we see our way out of the light at the end of the tunnel, as the governor mentioned yesterday. Do you expect a similar increase? Are you seeing a similar increase in either sailings or manifest transmissions or bill lading data?
I've seen an uptick in manifest transmission, bill of lading data, but nothing that's alarming. So, I mean, I think that remains to be seen. But in terms of our ability to respond, you know, we can surge our workforce to address, again, any work on the terminal or any work at the CESs to clear cargo. I mean, we've done this before. This isn't, you know, the pandemic is new for us as an experience, but in terms of, like, you know, we've had government shutdowns, we've had labor issues where we've had to surge up work additional shifts, work longer hours to make sure that we're processing trade. We can do that. We're going to do the same. Should be required.
And how about the airport? Do you see an increase? Obviously, we've had a massive disruption in the amount of air cargo lift, And certainly the airlines have been one of the key issues here in airport operations. How do you see that coming back online, or the CBP? Have they seen an increase in flights number? I'm sure you've seen an increased number of cargo flights, but
Car-
not necessarily passenger flights.
Well, we cargo. I mean, based on our numbers, cargo has not decreased. In fact, we're seeing an increase in certain type of cargo flights, certain charters. So we're seeing a lot of shipments of PPE, different utilization of how they're introducing cargo on the aircraft. But with regard to day-to-day operations or resumption of operations, internally we have a plan on how to resume, but that's going to be on the cargo front. I think we're in a good position. We have sufficient staff to handle the cargo piece. I think what remains to be seen is how the passenger increase will occur. We've seen a tremendous drop in passengers, and I think it's almost like more than a 95% decrease in passengers at the airport. So those officers have been redirected to do other work, and a lot of it has been facilitating cargo requests or processing cargo. So I don't see any immediate impact in moving forward. If there's an uptick, again, we're positioned to address the cargo, because we don't anticipate that we're going to get back to our normal passenger counts overnight. That's going to happen. We anticipate it will happen incrementally. I don't see any immediate issue.
Very good. Yeah, I certainly, all reports are the passenger traffic is down dramatically. I had a colleague that had to travel for essential business, and that ended up being, I think he and 3 other people were the only people on an entire flight, which is pretty remarkable. But I think that's pretty consistent with what people are seeing around the United States, and anything that they don't have to do travel-wise there. And of course, there's not much to travel to, go and do and see because of this current situation. I want to see if we had any updates on the captain, Isaac, by any
Yes,
chance.
I'm here. Cameron, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. I tried to WebEx back in, but I'm getting a reply that I've been canceled out of the meeting. So I'm using an alternate method and trying to connect with you. So, but what
Sorry that happened.
What I was trying to articulate is operations for us are continue to remain steady. We have not had any interruptions associated with that. Our personnel are prepared to be able to conduct those operations. We have the appropriate level of PPE, not only for our search and rescue, but also protocols in place to ascertain and determine how we're going to go on board the ships presently for examination purposes as well. So our relationship with CBP is very symbiotic. They've, over the years and years and century, if you will, have imparted upon us to do some statutory requirements for them, and that's been provided for in law. And the best way, I kind of like to illustrate our relationship with CBP is as a collective unit, and you're talking about a vessel, is they own everything on the inside as far as cargo goes, and we own everything on the outside as far as how a ship is designed and how it operates. So it's a very extraordinary and very natural relationship that we have. The other aspect that we're also required to ensure the safety and security is when the ships do come into port to conduct their cargo operations, is that interface with the regulated facility. So, being able to ensure that the facilities maintain their physical security, as well as vendors and contractors and other agents, if you will, that enter the facility. There's been tremendous concern about obviously the spread of the coronavirus on the shore side, being able to enter the regulated facility footprint. So those are some of the unique things that we're having to review and address and take a different business perspective, if you will. So as far as Coast Guard operations go, the port complexes they're all open for business. Nothing has been reduced down. and we're here to continue to provide those services.
All right, thank you very much. And now I've been onto your home port website and we looked over the port directory, specific captain of the port details that are available by anyone who wants to Google home port United States Coast Guard. Are there any other specific Coast Guard contact points or details that our membership or members on the participants on this call should be aware of if they have questions or concerns, either as vessel operators or as parties handling crew or other issues?
That your immediate touch point is our facility here within the port complex, which is we're like I mentioned earlier, we're located in San Pedro alongside the U.S. Coast Guard base, Los Angeles, Long Beach. So those contacts should also be on home port, should also be on our portal page. And if they're not, feel free to give me a call and we'll make sure you have the connections.
Very good. And just for anyone out there who hasn't been on this website, it's got a lot of detailed information. Homeport tr.uscg.mil is the website address, and we'll be providing this in our deliverables as well. With respect to workforce, do you see any continuing impacts from Corona 19 or COVID-19, Captain Rochester, that's any way or of concern to you, that, or any additional thoughts on that point?
You know, Cameron, I think the health and readiness of our workforce has always been the number one concern, regardless of COVID-19. It's just part of how it's very how we do business on a day-to-day basis. COVID-19 has just altered the way that we do the manner of our business and how we creatively approach how we're going to assess a ship and or examine a ship. So I you know, as a commanding officer, as running the operations here within the port complex, I'm always concerned about the health and welfare of our personnel. To date, we do not have any COVID positive 19 members. And we've employed the associated and appropriate personal protective equipment. And that goes also across our patrol boats and across our small boat stations. So all of us have been given the appropriate pandemic training, as well as the level of PPE required to do the job.
Very good. Thank you very much. I want at this time open the call up to any questions. Please, anyone who would like to ask a question, please put it onto the chat so that I can ask your questions on your behalf. We have that facility available. Also wanted to briefly review again any questions that anyone would have today. We've had kind of an interesting go of it because of the technology challenges. So I want to say again, thank you, Captain Rochester, for adapting and overcoming that and continuing the mission. Appreciate that very much. And if anyone has any questions, I'm still waiting. I haven't seen anything on the chat feed. There's something about someone asked the question. This one's directed to DFO Martel. Carlos, are we getting more customs hold on export containers? And can there be a reduction in inspection charges?
Well, with regard to, and I see the questions, is how can we get more customs holds? I'm not clear on what the holes are. I mean, we have an outbound enforcement mission here in LA, and so the number of holds that we place will fluctuate based on what our threats are. So I can't, without having more detail on what those customs holds involve, I really can't answer that question. I can't say that we've seen a significant increase on outbound export holds, but I mean that's something I probably need a little bit more information. And with regard to the inspection charges, I don't know that we govern that. So I mean I'd have to defer to my team to find out how those charges are assessed.
Someone also asked if the local points of contacts will be communicated out, and that's absolutely. We'll be sending out deliverables to everybody on this call. They're available through the CBP website, but also through the CSMS portal, as well as Captain Rochester mentioned the home port address for the U.S. Coast Guard as well. So, and there are very specific phone numbers and emails for inspection teams, prevention, waterway management, and the like for each one of the home port contact numbers. And at this point, would really like to know that both Captain Rochester and DFO Martel have other business to attend to. We got a few more questions here, so want to see if we can get those in while we still have time. We are all aware that MSC 2300 TEU ships have rotated from Asia to take empties back to that region. Any sense when those empties will be coming back fully loaded, where the volume of cargo will start to increase? I guess that's a general question to either one of you.
On my end, I mean, I'd have to do a little research on that. I don't know off the top of my head what that schedule would look like. I don't know if someone on my team, I know I have a couple of team members on the line. I don't know if Laura Tapia can weigh in on that, but I don't know that we have a clear picture of when we're going to see fully loaded containers coming back.
I may have to unmute her, so
Cameron, so right now, at least what we're seeing on the Coast Guard side of operations, we're seeing these larger TEU capacity vessels coming in once a week to take away those empties. But beyond that, and we're talking, a capacity now, whether they max out that capacity, I don't know about that, but their capacities are running right now at the 23,000 TEU level.
And Assistant Port Director Tapia, I've unmuted you if you wanted to join the conversation or were available. Very good. Well, obviously we live still in a supply and demand world, and as long as the demand is there and the supply is willing, I'm sure we'll see a return to regular operations in short order. Just a matter of getting everybody on the same page and getting exports and imports realigned and rebalanced. Obviously, there's challenges in both our domestic supply chain, as we see on the news, as well as the international one. One last question here. These are holds. This is a follow-up, Carlos. I think these are holds on containers with cars and household goods. I think this goes to the export question. I was told it's random, and most of the time the containers are released after inspection.
And that's normal course. So we're always looking at vehicles that are leaving the country, as well as household goods, consolidated freight. I mean, this has been. I know that this has come up. It's an age-old issue for the trade in terms of the inspections we run, but we have our internal reasons for putting those on hold and conducting the inspections. Again, it's all based on our threats. So I don't know that in that realm, I don't know that our numbers have gone up that significantly. That'll fluctuate. That'll fluctuate based on our priorities and based on our threats.
I think we'd all agree that one of the issues there would be transparency into the manifest and what's actually in the container, and the better the information and the higher quality of the documentation provided at export will probably expedite that process. And whether photographs and detailed invoices or pro forma invoices or lists of packing lists are provided, it is usually helpful to expediting those types of releases and determining whether there are or not holds.
No, very good point, Cameron. I mean, and that's always the issue, is that we don't have enough paper information, make a determination as to what's in there, so that it'll end up being inspected. So transparency is important. The more information we get up front, the more information or a better description of the merchandise will help us triage what we want to look at versus what we could just go ahead and release for like.
Well, again, we're coming to the close of our hour, and I wanted to thank the captain for making herself available, and Captain Rochester. Do you have any closing remarks for us today?
Thank you, Cameron. I continue to look forward to conduct operations in alignment with our key leadership, not only out of Washington, D.C., but out of our district office, as well as the governor of the state of California, and our close network partnership with CBP OFO and Director Martel's team. So from the Coast Guard, we continue to maintain our level of operations in the best posture for the public's safety and health. Thanks, Cameron.
Thank you so much, Captain Rochester. Appreciate your time today here, and we'll make the platform a little more user-friendly the next time we do this, and we look forward to having you as a guest on a future interview. And again, thank you for your time and for your service. And Carlos, did you have any closing remarks that you'd like to make to the membership and to the trade?
I'd like to echo Captain Rochester's remarks. I mean, our commitment to the trade is we're going to maintain a steady state of operations. I mean, operations, we will adjust to address cargo volume. And we're committed to the FTA and to all the trade stakeholders to address any concerns, any questions, to continue the movement of cargo. So again, we're going to put out a POC list with all of our contact information. If you have any questions, any concerns, any issues, please feel free to contact us. Don't hesitate. And I guess in closing, Monica, I just want to say we appreciate the relationship with the Coast Guard. You guys, I mean, it's a tremendous relationship, and we thank you for all the support and everything that you do for our country.
Likewise, Carlos. Thank you for yours as well.
All right, everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us, or to our speakers here today, Captain Rochester and DFO Martel. We have gotten a great insight to what the operation's current status is here in the Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, and the region. We are going to be providing everyone on this call, as well general membership, points of contact for both the customs operations here in Los Angeles, as well as the national link to deal with COVID-19 processing questions, as well as Captain Rochester and her team's contacts at the home port. And with that, I want to say thank you for everyone who helped to make this happen. Antonio Bello, Isaac, thank you so much both for your time and for your assistance in making this happen, and being patient with the technology as we put this together. Also to Elva over at your team as well, Carlos, Elva Mutan, for her time and input and meetings. So we had a lot of them getting this off the ground. So again, I want to thank everyone who participated in this, as well as Pair Strategies and their assistance with backboning this. With that, I say thank you very much. Welcome. Hopefully we'll be seeing a little bit brighter days for trade and for the community at large, and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll be ending the meeting. Thank you. Bye-bye.